Hello, everybody. Welcome the internet as a whole to the Pregame Network podcast, episode 17, where the episode where some of my favorite games have come to die.
Yeah, today's a special occasion. Normally it's
Oh,
me.
yeah.
Normally it's me pointing to something that's exploding or dying or just awful with, optimism either at the beginning or the end saying things will get better. It's Dan's turn to talk about the various things exploding on his side of the fence.
I don't think that, like, I'm gonna let me save it. I'll just start off as usual. I'm just gonna say what I've been playing because it's only been really one game, and then you can tell me what you've been playing, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of what we're gonna talk about. So
Yeah.
I have pretty much sunk my teeth into Mad Max again. It's so much fun. I love it. It is probably one of my favorite open world games. Far Cry 3 is up there. I know you have your opinions on this, but I really did love Cyberpunk after they fixed it. But yeah, Mad Max, the game is so good. Like, I got the itch after I watched Furiosa, and yeah, and like I think I said this last week also, but like the audio design when you get in your car and you turn it on, you hear that fucking V8 roar. Oh, every time.
Very
It's so
satisfying.
good. It's so good. And so, like, I'm playing it on my laptop, but the game came out in 2016. So my laptop is from like 2022 or 21 or something. I can max out all the settings on my laptop, and I didn't notice it before, but like there's a lot of particle effects when you're smashing cars into each other. And the fire looks very good even today.
Mad Max, you can say a lot about it. It is from that time where Western developers were still in the race when it came to like polish and things like that. So to hear that, now that you're playing it much later in the future, maxed out on a laptop and it runs well and it runs great, it's a testament of those times when devs were still, doing things. I think you said that it was, you consider that the peak of the studio, right?
I think John said that, but I don't think that he was wrong. I think because Avalanche made the Just Cause series, and that kind of went off the rails after like Just Cause 2, I think, or 3.
Yeah, Just Cause has that issue that a lot of games run into, where it's just like you have like a very niche and cool and fun idea, and then it jumps the shark, I guess you could say.
Yeah, like Saints Row, in the same sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Avalanche 100% peaked with Mad Max because, like, yeah, it's an open world game about Max, but like your car is the central focus. Like the car's name in the game is the magnum opus. It's all about your car, and the way that they designed the combat system around the car is phenomenal. But like the combat system on foot is like a much more dumbed down version of the Arkham series, but it's still very satisfying because it borrows from that series. Like that combat system in Arkham is so good that like when Avalanche takes it to borrow it for their game, and it's just like a fraction of what Rocksteady did in the Arkham series, it's still great in Mad Max.
Yes.
So I love it. I think it's a great game, and it's worth every penny that I paid for it. Even though I paid for it twice now, but it's a lot of fun. So that's what I've been playing. I've finally sunk my teeth. Like when I sit down and I actually have time right now, I'm like, can I grind out something on Destiny that the new craftable guns or whatever? Like, nah, I think I'm just gonna play Mad Max. Like, it's just a more enjoyable experience right now. And so yeah, I've been playing Mad Max and I'm enjoying it immensely.
Very good.
So tell me, what have you been playing this week?
I mean, I won't get into the nitty gritty because we'd just be here too long. I have not touched a single player game in the entire week just because I've been very busy. I think last week I kind of touched on it. I told you that I'd be up and coming. I'd be playing a shit ton of fighters because I want to get like a steady rhythm going for, when me and Harrison and whoever else play fighting games, right? So that's pretty much all. Like I throughout the week I've been working on shit, playing Street Fighter, and then on the weekend 8-hour sessions of just fighting games, just playing through them. I'm actually gonna send you something in the content chat just to kind of give you an idea of like what my weekends basically look like with the fighting game shit.
Fuck? How do you even keep up with that?
We are going through a shit ton of fighters. I played Soul Calibur 6, Soul Calibur 2, DNF Duel, Arcana Hard, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, All-Star Battle, Tekken, Street Fighter, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom, older Street Fighter games. It's
a lot of fighting games.
It is a lot. Like, even like me and Harrison are used to playing like 3 to 5 hour sets. Like the 8-hour mark, even us, we were just like, what, this was a lot, especially jumping between so many different games, and we're not gonna be done till the end of the month. So it's just been nothing but fighters, which I'm happy enough with. But I'm hoping to this week, while I'm working on, I should try to get back into something, or I might start that playthrough of Dead Rising that I've been talking about doing. We'll see what happens, but that's all I've been playing. Fighting games, nothing but fighting games. And when I'm not playing the fighting games, I'm playing more fighting games that aren't on the list of fighting games that I need to play. So it's just a lot.
That is your niche. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, that was a pretty short segment of this episode. I mean, I don't think that was going to go much longer than that anyway.
Yeah, nothing groundbreaking or life changing. It was a pretty standard week.
All right, so before we jump headfirst into the Destiny drama, there was one other big thing that happened this week, right?
Sure.
There was something else. Why am I blanking on it right now?
Oh, I thought you meant like that you knew about it.
No, oh god, what the fuck was it? There was something else that happened this week aside from
there's
Destiny.
3 off the top of my head that we talked about. There was GameInformer shutting down.
Yes, that was it. That was it.
GameInformer shut down.
All right, so yeah, GameInformer shut down after what, 33 years?
Yes, 33 years.
What an absolute fucking travesty.
Yeah,
I don't think I need to really say. I don't have to explain to you why this really cuts me personally deep. But I think for the sake of whoever is listening, I think I'm just going to explain it anyway.
Yeah.
You and I, I'm among countless other people, grew up on GameInformer.
Oh,
it was the only magazine subscription that I had ever in my life. And looking forward to those months, or the one day out of the month where the issue would come in the mail, and the whatever game had the cover page, and ooh, what's this going to be about? I never really read as much as I did the GameInformer magazine, and I wish I never threw out my collection, because I had a whole stack and I got rid of them.
I think we talked about it very briefly one of our early episodes. You had mentioned that, because I in the basement I have
you still have them?
at least 70 issues down there.
Yeah, you can't get rid of those.
Yeah.
Do you know why they shut down?
So I didn't look into specifics. My assumption is it's kind of broad, but I look at all of the mainstays that have been around that long, or just bigger publications, and I think that it's a mixture of just not adapting with the times, having I'm not going to say it was tainted, because there's a lot of tainted companies and institutions out there. I think GameInformer kind of avoided most of it. It's not as bad as an IGN, but there were a few editors or a few writers who were the kind that would be actively hostile towards the medium, and that, I'm sure that drove down viewership in a few ways. I think the biggest thing when we finally get a post-mortem and people start writing articles about the articles and all that stuff is, I think we're going to find that it was really just they didn't adapt. And I'm not going to be that guy who says magazines are of the past and shit like that, because everything can find its niche and kind of survive. I think GameInformer
was probably the one company, as far Nintendo Power was a big one also, as far as physical literature goes.
Yeah, there was
something about a GameInformer issue that I don't know, it just felt good to read.
GameInformer had the most consistent, feel, you could say. Because if you look back at a lot of, if you look at PSU or EGM or any of those older magazines that kind of came and went, some of the one-offs from when we were kids, you'll notice that, they never really found their spot. right? A lot of
Yeah.
a lot of them were either too stuffy or like too reckless, and I think Game Informer more than other ones managed to find that like tone that wasn't too overly businessy, but not too wild. Because like if you look at especially a lot of the covers back then, like you could tell like there was like an energy there that was like not bad inherently, but it doesn't like translate to staying power year over year as things shift and things change. I will say that that once again, just to kind of like answer your question again, is I think it was a matter of just adapting. But the second thing that I would say is that it's also had to do with probably GameStop not doing all that great. You know, just
Yeah,
like
that's a good point too.
yeah, it's like it's almost like one could lean on the other and vice versa. But like when it came time for Game Informer to need like a lean or like to like almost run at a loss, I'm going to assume it had to do with the fact that just the business as a whole wasn't doing very well.
I almost forget that GameStop owned them.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it seemed like I knew that, but Game Informer was such like it seemed like such its own entity for so long that
well, yeah,
it just
because
I memory hold that one.
yeah, because GameStop, while GameStop was going through all that shit and still is, it's still it's not in a stable place right now. Game Informer just kept doing its thing. It may have stumbled once or twice, but it like once again that's a testament to its overall tone. I get like it's you don't add tone to a magazine, but its feel, its general presence was
it's really
was
hard
of
to
that,
put into words.
yeah, it's whatever tone would be for like a medium like art, like video games and movies and shit. Whatever tone means for magazines is what set Game Informer apart and what allowed it to persist consistently throughout the years. But I do think that
That one came out of nowhere too. For me, like when I heard about that, I was like, "What the fuck? Like when did this even start happening?" Like I don't even. It just kind of happened.
It was very abrupt, and it was crazy too because it's like people like the website was like shut down at the same time that this announcement came out, so it was like slammed the door shut kind of thing. But it's like I don't hate Game Informer. I didn't have a subscription for a while. I had it the longest out of everybody we knew, just because it's like I had it, and then somebody I knew would have a power up card, and they would just send it to me because they didn't see value in it. And I don't know, it seemed rather consistent. I'm not going to pretend to be the biggest into the later issues to see if there was a decline in something that I couldn't have seen. I'll be honest, the most I've seen from Game Informer, like in the most recent year, is like former editors-in-chief and people online arguing about the typical political bullshit. So I hope none of that trickled into the magazine, because that would add. But I think in the long run, it's probably not going to be one of those cases. I think it's really just a matter of it got pinched in a particular time frame where they just weren't set to take that fall. So.
Yeah, it's a shame. It really is. I know that, like, again, we are not the only ones whose early gaming careers were kind of not defined, but like I remember so clearly reading issues of Game Informer, and it has had very fond memories attached to the magazine. So it fucking sucks. It's not fun.
Yeah. It's definitely it's not a pleasant situation, and like I said, I don't like to throw in with something that I'm not too familiar with the current climate when it went away, but it's like that you feel that one,
Yeah, I don't remember when I canceled my Game Informer subscription, or I don't think I just let it expire. I had it for years, and then I think maybe like I got a job making my own money, and then oh man, for the life of me, I can't remember why I'd never continued to get the magazine.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna I can't presume your position, but I would say at the time where you were getting a job and trying to get out of the house and make your own way, you were very, very, very tight on money.
Oh yeah, I remember.
There were times where groceries, you couldn't afford that. It would not surprise me if it was just one of those things you couldn't justify.
Yeah.
It was not personal. GameInformer.
No, baby, come back. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. That was always pragmatic about that stuff. But yeah, so that sucks. Speaking of sucking,
Oh boy.
Destiny's kind of fucked, huh?
Yeah. All right, Dan, lead us in.
I'm
Navigate
trying
this train
to
wreck.
keep a very positive attitude about this
I have
because
no idea why.
no,
Just continue. I'll try and keep my comments
it's
to a
okay. As
minimum.
I need the humor.
Okay.
All right, so this all started a couple days ago when Bungie like put out one of those fucking JPEG. No, I'm sorry, not Bungie. Pete Parsons, the CEO of Bungie, or the studio head, whatever position he's in. I think he's the CEO. Put out this whole JPEG with like it was basically an article, and it basically described how they are laying off like 220 people, I think it was, or maybe like 170, and then it was an additional 50 or something after that. But it was like 17% of their entire workforce. It was like a good chunk of people, and this came out of nowhere, especially like off the heels of Final Shape when it performed really well critically, but apparently like it was behind Lightfall financially, which is kind of crazy, but I mean that's neither here nor there. And so basically, they pulled that lever again to lay off a chunk of the company, but like this was a larger piece than any other layoff previously, and now they're basically scaling everything down. They said that that the entire studio is now solely focused on Destiny and on Bungie. All the other projects that they had in incubation and in development are canned. They're not working on anything else. What it sounds like to me is that it's like a form of hostile takeover from Sony. So when they got bought out for the 2.3 or 3.2 billion,
3.8, I think.
yeah, something like that. Basically what happened was that Pete Parsons made all these promises to Sony because they needed the cash to keep the studio going, to keep Destiny running, and Destiny's the big moneymaker, so they have to keep developing it. And he takes a big chunk of this money. We talked about this previously, but like he spent like $3 million on classic cars, and that's like gives everybody a good thing to point to, like,
yeah,
what he's doing.
What I had said is like that's something to look at. Like obviously like that paints like a comical like villain at the top,
Right.
where it's just like, look, yeah, the guy at the top had all the money. My understanding is a lot of that came from like sign on and retention bonuses, and then further bonuses down the line. That's my understanding. It's not that he was like siphoning money from the company. It's just the deals were lopsided from the get-go, is my understanding. And what I had said is that people are going to paint this man as a scapegoat and try to make this about corporate greed, and I think that's the wrong play, because I think what all this stems from, and you can continue where you were going with this, but I think a lot of this it stems from mismanagement of talent, bleeding talent, overvaluing Bungie from the get-go, and other things that hurt the company internally. But people are going to turn this into a corporate greed thing, like, oh, I can't believe they just threw Bungie, they cut Bungie like that.
And of all of those things. So
Yeah.
apparently, according to people that were just laid off and that have worked there previously, that either left or were let go, like, he's not a great guy, and he made all these promises to both the player base and to Sony that, oh, we can make all these different things at the same time, and the reality is that they couldn't. Now, I think that when people say like, oh, this is the end of Destiny, because that's really the only game that they have out right now. I think that's extremely hyperbolic. I don't think it's the end of Destiny. Now, that being said, I don't think that Destiny is going to look anything like it has looked going forward. According to Bungie, they're scaling everything way, way back. We're not getting yearly expansions anymore, which really does suck. We're not getting a Destiny 3. That was apparently never in development, and whatever kind of successor project that was canceled.
Yeah, the one they were talking about was something called Payback, and my understanding was it was a spin-off,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to focus less on your character in Destiny, but big names in the universe doing other
Yeah.
shit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that was canceled. Now they're just going to focus on basically Destiny seems to be on life support right now, and
Maintenance
they're
mode
gonna
is what it's affectionately called when an MMO goes into
yeah
this particular uncertain content drought.
yeah. They after the Final Shape launch, they had this like Vidoc of, oh, here's what's coming, and they just wrapped up one of the like the first episode now, and then we're going to get into the second one soon. The third one is later in the year, and then after that is something called Frontiers. Nobody knows what Frontiers is. Nobody knows when it's supposed to come out. No one knows anything about it other than there's a Destiny offering called Destiny 2 Frontiers. The end.
My understanding is that after the current promises, what Destiny's content is rumored to look like is update every 6 months, but it's like a very small like content like drop.
Yeah.
Where it's like you get like one cinematic story hook and some missions. And the other thing I heard is that going forward they want to not that they is in like, oh, the studio planned this, but what, you know, with this new takeover with Sony is what their big focus is on small drops of content that can be repeated, so that it's like there's an incentive to play and pay and shit like that.
Well, that's kind of the whole point of Destiny anyway. But I think it's gonna. So I think that there's a huge portion of the player base that, after Final Shape came and went and the story was wrapped up, I think a large chunk of us just checked out. Like, we're just done. It's been 10 years of Destiny following the same story threads, everything wrapped up, and I think a lot of people are just kind of over it.
Yeah, I mean that would be tough enough without all the other bullshit going on at a corporate level. It's like when you wrap up a decade-long story. I mean, Final Fantasy 14 just went through the same thing, and you can tell it like wears on people. It's hard to get that spark, even if you have a lot of great plans. But like with this, it's like I can't imagine.
So I think that a lot of people are being hyperbolic. I don't think it's the end of Destiny, but I think that it's not going to be the way that it has been for the past several years, because first of all, Bungie can't afford to let that game go to complete shit.
Unless Marathon does really well.
Unless Marathon does really well, but that in and of itself is a very tall order.
That is a long shot. That is such a long shot, given what we know about Marathon, what we've heard about Marathon, and just the general feeling around Marathon. It's just.
Mm-hmm. And so, you like to touch on like the great reset of the gaming industry a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. To an extent, if you wanted to call it
right. A lot of if you've seen one Bungie Vidoc, you've pretty much seen them all. And what I'm referring to is the fucking pronouns in the name. So like where I'm going with this.
So all the virtue signaling and shit that you know. Yeah. Okay.
Like Bungie is huge on that, and they have been for quite some time. I don't know, like, the talent level of the people that were let go. I know that after I think it was Lightfall, it might have been the Witch Queen. I think after Witch Queen, Bungie announced all these big plans for expansion. They built like another office in another country. They went on this mass hiring spree, and they were announcing all these plans for different things and how great it is to work at Bungie and blah blah blah. Clearly, that was a fucking lie. Clearly, that was a lie. And when DEI and wokeness creeps into shit, it will go to shit. I think Bungie was in the right place at the right time with the people who originally created Destiny 1 and like vanilla D2, that the game feels as good as it does to play. And I think that Bungie has stood on those legs for a very long time. And it still does, like, because those are just the roots of the game. But like, oh God, what were you saying the other night? We were playing First Ascendant, and like some the whole like romance thing between Osiris and Saint
Oh
14.
yes.
Yeah.
What I
So
had
all
heard
of
and
that,
seen.
real quick.
So I forget exactly where it was. If you give me 1 second, I could probably pull it up.
Yeah. So basically,
Memento.
like, yeah, okay. If you're a Destiny player, well, who do you think Destiny's primary demographic is? Give me a
People like you, and I'm not saying
yeah.
that based purely on bias. I'm saying that because like we've talked a lot, even both on this podcast and just in general, where Destiny fills a certain niche a certain way, where it's like, you know, you have people who are into shooters, and there's like Destiny offers like MMO structures fed through a first person shooter, and
Right.
there's nothing else really quite like it, and it hooks
Yep.
people like you who aren't completely retarded about their shooters. Like there's people that'll just sit down and they play Call of Duty for 10 hours a day, and like that's their gaming outlet. Like nothing else will do. You are someone who enjoys Call of Duty, you enjoy good shooting, but you can also like appreciate long-term grinds, in-game rewards, light RPG elements, and Destiny is really the only game of that caliber, and it's coupled with shooting that was bred from Bungie, who did one of the best shooters ever.
Right.
So that's what I mean when I say you. I mean like that kind of game.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I gotcha. So Bungie's demographic, are, you know, males that are like what, 15 to 30, maybe 35 or something.
So I would say it's a little higher than 15. I would say like 20 at lowest for Bungie.
No, I disagree.
I don't know.
I disagree. I've been in a lot of LFGs with people that are way younger than that.
Yeah, but I can appreciate that, but I think that the retention numbers for people below the age of 20 aren't that high. That's my I would argue that, but
all right. Well,
yeah, I'll trust you on that, but
be that as it may, like the demographic for a game like this or any first person shooter, really, it's not going to be people that are into, you know, that side of the political spectrum. And you know, the virtue signaling Bungie does with the fucking pronouns, and like they definitely plucked at least 2 transgender people to be in those Vidocs to show their face. Like it's so they're not forcing it down your throat, but they're just saying, "Here, look at it. Here it is."
you can tell certain positioning, you know,
right,
positioning certain employees in the right areas to get a certain a certain signaling of their virtue out to a certain degree, you know.
So, you know, anybody who plays Destiny as avidly as I have, like, doesn't give a fuck about the relationship between Osiris and Saint 14. Like that, I remember when they came out with that like story beat, and I was just like, ugh, why? Like they can't just be friends. Like it doesn't serve anything.
So that, like, what I was getting at is like, as far as the kind of person behind there, so it's like, what the fuck did she say? She said something like, I'd always seen, you know, a relationship brewing behind Osiris and Saint 14, you know, personally, but it wasn't until I became the narrative director that I realized that my feelings were correct, or something to that degree.
How fucking crazy is that?
Yeah, and I'm like, and what I said to you was something along the lines of like, listen, because what you had said to me, you said, you know, it's not in your face. It just seems like it's kind of for no one, right? It doesn't serve a purpose. It's just in the background. And my response was, it's fine if it's not shoved in your face, a story element. What I take issue with is when people like that latch on to a series at a certain point go in and insert their own beliefs and their own things like that when it was clearly never intended, or if Old Guard that worked on a certain particular game inserts something, and it's not even about like gay or straight, it could be literally anything. That's just the most glaring, because, you know, they typically go online to social media to gloat about it all the time. But it's if that's like how flippant you are around a story, you know, what else are you gonna be flippant around, you know?
Right. So where I was going with all this is that they, because they have the values that they do, they went on this hiring spree that they didn't need to go on, and artificially inflated the company with people that, how do I say this? They artificially inflated the company with people that probably had no business being there in the first place. And now, when a large chunk of that employee base gets laid off, all people see is corporate greed, and like, so I don't know where the DEI ends and the corporate greed begins.
Okay.
To the point where, like, now the game that I like is suffering.
Yes, so
Does that make sense?
Yes, that's actually exactly, like, I was in the back of my mind. I'm like, is that where he's going with this? Because it's like, I understand what you mean by that entirely, and it's kind of why I said, like, everybody focusing on the corporate greed thing is like, you're not going to get to the other core issues at Bungie, and like, between the talent that they're losing and the people that they're keeping, it's like, how far is too far gone before you can salvage it, because it's just like, oh, you're focusing on the fact that the mean man bought cars, but you're not focusing on, like, oh, like, I think of way back when that one comment they had where they just, like, they needed to learn to under-deliver so that players wouldn't be too expectant. And I'm very interested to know where that decision came from, where the roots of that are. We talked about that guy that was making changes to characters as soon as he got in a position of power. I'm just like, you should not have anyone, regardless of what they're trying to push, in that position where they're just foisting their own personal canons and not what's best for the story in the story. I'm always more concerned about that, because corporate greed, you shine a light on it, you get them to fuck off for a bit. Deep-rooted issues like employees that don't know where to rein in their own personal beliefs, or that have really shitty ideas or work ethic, that's like that's not so easy to pinpoint and nail down, especially from a consumer level. That's something, it's like, you gotta know where to push, who to push, so that goes away, but it's like you can't do that if you're focusing on the mean man that bought cars.
But like, I think that it's not mutually exclusive. Like, Pete Parsons has definitely mismanaged Bungie into the ground at this point. I think that's pretty clear. But absolutely. I also think that, the money that he spent on those cars, I don't know where that money came from. It might have been from Sony. I don't know. Maybe he's just really good with his money. Like, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about. We touched on it earlier, but I mean, the deal that Sony cut with Bungie is probably the most gracious.
Sony was stupid for doing that.
It was the most gracious and lenient deal in the history of this era, where there's constant acquisitions of different companies. Yeah. It is amazing. It's like they had no oversight, no overreach. Everybody was like, certain people were getting retention deals, like, hey, if you stay within a certain period, we'll pay you even more money. They went in fully for their reputation, and the fact that they saw, like, value in Destiny, even though, how was Destiny when the Sony deal went through? Not like the repercussions, but like, how was Destiny's standing when Sony bought Bungie?
When was, like, give me a year.
Let's see.
Because if it was Lightfall, then the problem with Lightfall,
2022.
So that seems like it was right after Witch Queen.
Okay.
Probably. So Destiny was in a really good state.
Okay. So they probably, I think it was a mixture of, like, Bungie's good, Destiny's in a good spot, and we could probably turn this into an ongoing income stream if it's played correctly. Yeah. I think that was their thought process. And like I said, I mean, even with all that being said, even with, like, the clout that Bungie had, like, the deal that they got was so incredible. Like, it is, like, obviously Bungie is a company, not a singular entity, and, there's people at the top that get payoffs, but, like, that is such an amazing deal in retrospect, especially given how everything kind of came crashing down. It's just the amount of money and the amount of leniency that Bungie got, and the fact that they basically ran, I would argue, at a loss for Sony. for
Hmm.
2 years is pretty wild. Like
There were
that's
2 different rounds of layoffs between the Sony buyout and now,
yeah. It,
including this most recent one.
yeah, it was that's I mean, we talked about it when it first started happening when Sony like basically for the first time put their foot through the threshold to kind of say like what the fuck's going on in here. Like that
Hmm.
was like I can only imagine like the breaking point, what it was like in like the shareholders room, you know?
Yeah, what a fucking mess. All of
Yeah.
this. What an absolute fucking mess. Because like, it didn't need to be this way
Mm-hmm.
if anybody at the top was upfront about how things were going for either Destiny itself or Bungie as a whole or just whatever. Because it they got a tremendous injection of cash, and which is crazy just on its own, for one product, and they have Marathon in development, which is probably going to be coming out, and at this point, some point in 2025, I would think, maybe even later than that, just based on the turmoil that the studio is in. And then they have like 3 different incubation projects. I think one of them was a Destiny spinoff. That was Payback. Matter was like something that was being funded by NetEase or Tencent, one of the two. And
Mm-hmm.
then Gummy Bears was supposed to be a completely different thing.
Yeah, so
And
I heard a little bit about gummy bears and the way it was described. I'm just like, ugh. Ugh. And it's not, it has nothing to do with the name or like the lighter tone, because you know me, I like what's good, but it's just the
Mhm.
way it was described. I'm just like, no,
Yeah, it was not supposed to be like
no.
another hero shooter, right?
It was
Or
supposed
hero.
to, what the fuck was it described as? Hold on, let me bring this up. Bungie gummy bears, MOBA esque.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Uh,
And this one I'm pretty sure is gonna squeak by and still get developed. Uh, yeah, MOBA. I mean, there was more to it than that. What the fuck? Come on, give me the full. Taking inspiration from fighting games, platformers, and MOBAs, life sims, and frog-type games, wrapped in a lighthearted comedic world.
This
And
sounds like every bad idea ever.
yeah, and somebody mentioned like some of the more virtuous things that it was going to try and push. You know,
Almost
it was
sounds like
just
Concord.
Concord for kids is what it sounded like to me. For the a more PG Concord, I should say, and it's not like Concord's nothing special. It's not it's basically PG. But anyway, yeah, Destiny, Bungie, back on track. What were you getting at?
What was I getting at? I was getting at the fact that a lot of these people that were laid off most likely didn't have either enough of or good enough of a pedigree to be working at Bungie,
Yeah,
because they seem to hire a lot of activist types.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
No,
saying
that's
that
that's
like the
definitely
layoffs were a
true.
good thing, because I'm sure that
No,
a
no,
bunch of
of course not.
people that knew what they were doing, that deserved the job, lost their job.
Yeah, of
But
course.
but on the
Because
other hand,
when these layoffs hit, like the biggest issue about the layoffs is regard like I'm a bit more fast and loose where I say like, oh good, more layoffs, can somebody please catch on, and just and tear out the roots of this issue. But like at the same time, you have like veteran industry people who are quiet. They're not arguing on fucking Twitter or anything like that. They
mhm.
they catch strays and then they're out too. Like I'm pretty sure there were some senior layoffs alongside a bunch of the nameless code monkeys and whatnot. You know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, and it sucks because like there is still so many loose ends in the Destiny universe
Mm-hmm.
after the Final Shape campaign wrapped up, that they could touch on so much stuff. Like, I know this probably gets thrown around a lot, but like the Destiny lore is actually very rich and very deep, um, because there's just so many different people working on it, and it feels like it's. I know you said maintenance, but it does feel like life support.
Yeah, like I said, maintenance mode is very affectionate of a term. It's normally it's a dip in content that most players dread when you hear maintenance mode. It's really just to keep the lights on while they figure out what they're doing, or until the next big step, or until shutdown. You know.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this because I don't think it's going to get any better.
Yeah,
I think it'll get a lot worse before it gets any better.
The tricky part about it. I mean, I want to say that's how I approach most of these things. You know, it's going to get worse, but it will get better, right? Like the darkest before the dawn. Like there's always a turnaround.
There's no hook for the game now.
Yes,
which is a huge issue.
Yes, there's no hook for the game based on what you're telling me. They've gone through so many different layoff periods that I can't it's impossible for them to have not bled crucial talent. You know,
yeah.
Whether it's big names or like the guy you don't know
that's
the name
another
of.
thing that I forgot to bring up. Luke's. I'm sorry. Finish.
No, I was gonna say like even like you're about to bring up some names. There are people out there, believe it or not, this is still a thing. The no names that just carry whole sectors on their back. You know, the thankless motherfuckers out there that are just really good at their job. I know for damn sure you lost a few of those people already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, like whole teams were gutted, and like now there's like one person working on like a whole thing that was being managed by 5, 6, or 10 people.
Yep.
Which I don't know. And like so, in the previous Vidoc, with them laying out their plans for future content, like they have a lot of really cool shit planned from like a Destiny fan's perspective, including new systems for like crafting and new locations and just different weapons and all kinds of stuff like that. So now they have to make good on what they announced already, but now they have a fraction of the work. Like I don't understand how this is going to go. And I already paid up for the next year of Destiny when I bought the collector's edition for the final shape. So it's like,
I mean, in extreme situations, I would say like you're not getting that content because it wouldn't be the first time a game just they gave you some kind of in-game reward or some kind of light feature refund, you know. But I think a lot of the cool ideas that you heard about for the near future are either going to be significantly trimmed down or spread out over like 3 times the time frame. That's like the only thing I can see, unless they just absorb Bungie, you know, deeper into the Sony first party studios.
That was talked about to be like the next steps. Like Bungie is dangerously close from being absorbed into a Sony studio.
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't, I mean, like at a certain point, you just dwindle to the point where you may as well just be in the Sony studios, you know?
Yeah. So it's I don't know, man. Like I always kind of assumed that Destiny would end in like a whimper, you know, because like the games like this will just kind of peter out. Is my point.
I mean, it depends. Sometimes
they're not just gonna like have a grand finale and shut the fucking servers off. Like that's never gonna happen.
There a lot of MMOs tend to do that, where they have like a major blowout event, and then the game goes into that maintenance mode where, like, you know, it's still popular enough that people go out there and do the side content and whatnot. That Final Fantasy XI had like an extremely grand adventure and final quest, and then, you know, the servers are still up to this day because people just play it because it's a game that people like, you know. So I mean, it's not impossible for games to end that way. To just comment on that point.
Maybe I should. Okay. Let me rephrase. I didn't think that Destiny would end up ending in such a tragic way, especially after the off the back of probably the greatest expansion that they ever made, which makes it sting all the more.
I'll be completely honest. Just kind of
usually are
that. I'm surprised. Like, your opinion on this latest expansion has gone from I got what I wanted to I thought it was really good to the best expansion they've ever put out.
Well, when I said I got what I wanted, I know at what point you're referencing as far as when I said that. That was like my gut reaction as far as, I beat the final raid, I got the jacket, like I'm happy with my ending like my final major Destiny experience. I don't think I ever really. No, we definitely spoke about my opinions of the final shape. We definitely did. Yeah, I always thought it was like the best one that they've made. I mean, that might be like up for debate between the Taken King and Forsaken. Like Taken King, Forsaken are like often tied as two of the best expansions because those were completely game changing as far as like they brought the Destiny name back from the brink of essentially extinction.
Okay.
Um, but the final shape I think was the best all around package.
Even from a gameplay perspective.
Uh, See, this is where you get into like a pros and cons table because like Taken King added all the new supers and kind of gave it a cohesive story. Forsaken brought back random roles, which were like huge. Like if they didn't have random roles, then the game was gonna fucking die. The final shape gave us transcendence, uh, more crafting, like exotic class items. I think it was just more impactful overall for how Destiny played it as like it for its own identity
Mm-hmm.
uh, than than previous expansions. That's all I was really getting
Oh,
at.
okay.
So it's kind of over, but it's not really over. Like the Destiny that I've been playing for the past 9 years is kind of done. They've
Mm.
gone into maintenance mode, and now it's just like, okay, when is the IV going to stop the drip?
I was gonna say
That's
it's less of when and more of if. I think honestly,
yeah,
like they're hanging on by a thread. Just all
yeah.
things considered. So.
Like because they've been in these dire straits before, but this is different. So it's tragic, like I was saying before, that this is the
Yeah.
way that it ended. It's not like, okay, like we're gonna move on to a different project, which would be understandable. This is upper management ran this company into the fucking ground, and now Sony has to bring in their bookmakers to
Right
salvage
ship.
what's left. Yeah,
Yeah. Or no, not even right ship. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's more of like we gotta salvage what we can from this mess.
yeah, yeah. Like uh it's nuts. So anyway, Destiny is on life support, and but fortunately, we got the last expansion, and it was actually a good one.
Look at you, Mr. Brightside.
Look, I don't think that it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. They can't afford to let this game die. It's the only thing that keeps the lights on at Bungie.
I mean,
And
here's the thing:
until
they can afford to let it die because if Sony's running it at a loss, they don't care if Bungie goes under. Cut their
I
losses.
guess, but if they want to keep their but then they wouldn't have any reason to keep anybody at Bungie. They wouldn't have a studio otherwise.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like they could probably what if I was a Sony guy, right? And if I was just a malicious asshole,
Duh.
and I said, I gotta, I spent billions on this. I gotta get something out of it. Let me cut the team down to as small as possible. Do a drip feed of content that is like up essentially, it doesn't directly work like this, but the upcharge is like 90%, so I'm getting
Mhm.
some kind of money in my pocket from this purchase, and then just do that until I recoup some of the losses and then shut the thing down, or just pay to have the servers up and let people buy shit from the game.
Yeah. Apparently, like one of the they're planning on bringing Destiny 2 to mobile, and it's it's just like now that you think microtransactions were bad before with the Eververse, just you fucking wait.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to get any better that way.
All right, well, moving on from that, I think I've had my fill about talking about how much Destiny is fucked. Um,
Fair, fair.
what was that third thing you were talking about before? Because it was GameInformer, Destiny, and what was that third thing?
Blizzard it's rumored that Blizzard is trying to I'm sorry, Microsoft and Activision have approached Blizzard to form a team within the company to focus on AA development of certain games.
Oh yeah, that's right. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Uh, and so, I mean, we've been talking about AA should be a focus for how long, you know? I'm not filled with confidence that it's like an immediate slam dunk or anything, given the state of the industry. But I think that this is a step in the right direction as far as getting larger companies and conglomerates to actually look in that direction for cheaper development. While the focus for them is going to be obviously like, oh, we got to keep costs down. We're going to get little effort, little budget, go crank something out. Hopefully it's a hit. The fact that they're dipping their toes into it, it's like only extreme circumstances get them into this. So hopefully, regardless of whether the final products from this potential venture are like really, really good or really, really bad, that it teaches the industry names that you can try this at the very least.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you just run the risk of AA filtered through a AAA lens, and I don't know about that one.
But the company as big as Blizzard forming a team specifically for AA, like, wouldn't something get lost in translation through that AAA lens?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we said about Bungie. It really depends on who's left. I think
Yeah.
it's possible that a team. I think it's more likely that Blizzard has remnant talent from its golden years than Bungie does, for comparison's sake. Not to kick you while you're down. It's the closest comparison I have right now. I know that there's, I think recently some like old school names and big writers have returned to the company to try and right ship with World of Warcraft. So it's possible that there's some familiar names in the company available to work on other things. But we'll see. Plus, you also got to factor in the fact that between Microsoft and Activision, the employees could realistically come from anywhere. They just have
That's
the
true.
IPs on hand. I mean, what are the guys at King doing? It's like, oh, they do what, Candy Crush?
The
I'm
end.
sure they have a few guys laying around that could cut their teeth on something in AA. So.
What are the guys at King doing?
Oh, they changed they added a new map to Candy Crush, right? I don't know what the fuck they do over there. It's that's the kind of shit that Sony wants from Destiny, is whatever the fuck King is doing with Candy Crush. That's the kind of turnover and maintenance that
Yeah,
they
those
want.
things are like translatable.
No, I'm just saying, from the corporate visage, that's what they desire.
Oh my god. What kind of a shitty episode, huh?
Doom and gloom, doom and gloom.
Yeah.
There's gotta be something like lighthearted to talk about.
THQ Nordic had their press conference.
Oh yeah? What'd they say?
Yeah. They announced the Gothic remake.
Well, they didn't announce it. The Gothic remake was announced at the last conference they did.
They showed
I think they
it
showed it off for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some of that. That's
Wasn't Darksiders announced also?
Oh yeah, they were teasing a new Darksider. Do we know if it's a remake or a sequel?
I have no idea.
I think it's a sequel. The way they were teasing it makes me want to say sequel. THQ is secretly like trying a lot of shit in the background. I feel like they have like these big conferences that nobody watches where they talk about a lot of projects and then they try pumping them out, and they're kind of in that AA space. They're either doing AA projects or like AA remakes, which is weird, like a Gothic, like a Destroy All Humans, and they get pretty well received.
I used to love Destroy All Humans, and then like the remake came out, and it just looked not interesting to me.
It's tricky because like I don't want to say negative things about it, but that particular era of gaming, or that particular type of game, I should say, is back when like older styles of gameplay were still kind of there to a certain degree, where like you were expected to do a lot with very little. And I'm not disparaging Destroy All Humans. I just think that there's a certain level of antiquated, and even that sounds too dirty. I don't want to do it dirty like that. Like games that have like, they give you a set thing to do in gameplay. Back then they were giving you things you could unlock, like so you had like a small unlockable thing. It's almost like, imagine Ratchet and Clank, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to do in it. There's different worlds, different weapons, there's secrets, there's things you could try to unlock early, there's sequence breaking, there's all these things you can do. Destroy All Humans in games that I'm trying to describe that are like it are like a Ratchet and Clank if you had less of everything. If that makes sense.
That just makes perfect sense, actually. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, again, I don't want to disparage it because it has its audience. You know, it wasn't really for me at the time, and it isn't really for me now. But it was far from a bad game. It's just the focuses were different, and it kind of grew from the roots of gaming in a little different way. In the same way, it's like. If you look at like a Mega Man, for example, where it's like one really hard level with minimal unlocks that you're expected to play over and over and just rely on the gameplay to carry you through it. That's almost like what a Destroy All Humans is. There's very minimal, you know. So, to go off that tangent there. Yeah.
I want them to make another Ratchet and Clank game.
Okay, I'm gonna say this to you, buddy.
What?
Of all the games of that particular breed, you know, people like to lump together Jak, Ratchet, and Sly, and I think that's fair to lump them together. You're doing pretty well, all right?
No, I didn't say that I wasn't. I just fucking love Ratchet and Clank.
In fact, on top of that, that was one of the things Insomniac leaked. It's getting a budget that it has no right having because, you know, AAAs can't manage their budget appropriately, but you will be getting it eventually. Before 2030, you'll get another Ratchet and Clank.
Great. Now I just need Naughty Dog to take their heads out of their collective asses and make me a Jak 4.
I don't think I think it's going to take more than, you know, getting their heads out of their asses. I don't know if current Naughty Dog is capable, even if they wanted to do a Jak 4. They would need some kind of turnover. I don't know.
Naughty Dog went off a cliff.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, everybody likes to meme and do that one statement where you had what's his name, Neil Druckmann. You know, that famous quote of his. We don't use the word fun around here. About that serious. They're all about that serious storytelling now.
We don't use the word. Oh, what an idiot.
Yeah, and then you know, I showed it to I was talking to, I think it was Eric and Steve that one week where I posted all of their releases, like everything they had released for like the last 8 years, and most of it was Last of Us. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. All right, here's what I said. 2013, The Last of Us. 2013, The Last of Us Left Behind. 2014, The Last of Us Remastered. Then you had 2 Uncharted games. Then you had The Last of Us Part 2 in 2020. Then The Last of Us Part 1, which was the remake in 2022. Then The Last of Us Part 1 PC port 2023. Then The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered 2024. It's like,
oh my god.
That's Naughty Dog's catalog outside of collections. I think they might have squeaked one collection out. I don't know though. Yeah, I don't know.
They've only made fucking. It's so sad.
Yeah.
It's been like 15 years or whatever. Oh, Jesus.
And as much as I want to blame solely like the leadership of Neil Druckmann and like the people like him in the company that don't really want to make anything else, part of it is just AAA bloat, which we've talked about quite a bit, where it's just like when that Insomniac thing leaked a while ago, to get back to what we were talking about, or another thing that we were talking about is like the amount of money they were planning to spend on these games for development, and it's all bloat, it's all unnecessary. It's because you're outsourcing, it's because of your advertising budgets, and it's also because of what you're expecting to get in return. And their solution isn't to, oh wait, this budget is ridiculous, we should probably re-examine. Their solution is, let's make the game and split it up into parts and release it in parts, you know?
Well, they're trying to be like cultured, or no, not cultured, like sophisticated, that's the word.
So that's definitely part of it. That's definitely what Naughty Dog's trying to do. And Sony studios and Sony first party game studios, or companies that are very strongly partnered with them, like an Insomniac, like a Naughty Dog, like people always like to make that joke. Movie games about certain developers and certain personalities in the gaming space, but I mean that's what Sony wants. You know, they want movie cinematic experiences. You know, if you look at, I'm not commenting on the quality of any of these games. I'm just saying to take a look. Look at Spider-Man and how it handles itself. Look how The Last of Us handles itself, and God of War, and what was the other one? Uncharted. You'll notice they all have a very particular style. It's like you have 45% gameplay, and then you have 55% cinematics or walking segments or dialogue segments and shit like that. And I'm not the kind of guy that says it should be all pure gameplay. I think you can do a lot of fun things with cinematics and things like that in a video game. But like, there's a very particular way that the games in Sony's lineup handle themselves that are like near identical, and in how they feel and whatnot. You know.
Yeah, they are really
like,
similar.
You say sophisticated, and part of that is there where they want to be like video games but for adults, you know. But like
how they're Clank is for adults.
The through line that they attach to try and pull that off is like a cinematic focus. Like, you know, I guess the best way, and it's kind of extreme, but if you compare it to like The Last of Us, where like you'd be playing for a bit, then you'd open a door and like you could see like the fucking the letterbox, like the letterbox on the screen pop up, and all of a sudden you're sitting there for like 10 to 30 minutes, you know. Like that's the kind of experiences they're pushing out.
That's part of the reason. It was part of one of the many reasons why I enjoyed Destiny. It's because like you don't have to sit through a lot of bullshit just to get to the gameplay.
Yeah, you would. My understanding with Destiny, and it's like MMOs, is you would do a lot before those story segments pop up. Like, there's a lot of cinematics in Destiny, obviously, but it's not interrupting your gameplay constantly. It's normally the setup or a payoff to something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you know that's you know, I wouldn't say that's a perfect structure either, but it beats the alternative of constant interruptions.
But like, I don't mind a game that has a lot of cutscenes. Like, as you know, Uncharted is like one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, I get. You gotta understand. I get so much shit. Like, I like Metal Gear Solid 4, and people love to shit on Metal Gear Solid 4 because it got so many cutscenes. Because we all know Kojima would much rather be a movie director than working in video games. And Metal Gear Solid 4 ends with a 90-minute cutscene.
What?
I still like Metal Gear Solid 4. It's
seriously?
Yeah, it does. It is the original payoff to the Metal Gear series. 5 was kind of like a midquel that they made, but like 1 through 4 was supposed to be capped off with 4. Like, everything set up, everything that started with 1, everything that was set up in 3 got addressed in 4.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was never a Metal Gear fan. I didn't never like the gameplay.
1's overrated, 2 is very flawed, 3 is everybody's favorite for good reason, and 4 it gets shit on way too much. I liked 4 quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. It was never seemed fun to me.
Yeah. And you already know how I feel about 5. I've said it constantly.
Yeah,
how it's secretly the best third-person shooter ever made, or one of the best.
That wasn't Revengeance, right? No, that was a different thing.
So Revengeance, I don't want to go. I mean, we're kind of rambling about whatever comes to mind, which is fine, but like, I don't want to go too far off track. Revengeance started as a project called Metal Gear Solid 4 Rising, which was like a pet project from Kojima. And at a certain point, I don't know if it got canned or like Kojima lost interest, but they passed it off to Platinum. And you're familiar enough with Platinum to know what the wheelhouse is. You know, they do over-the-top action games.
I enjoyed Vanquish quite a lot, actually.
I'm not knocking Platinum at all. I'm just saying, you know what they do. They do over-the-top action. And some people say that Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is their like favorite Platinum game. It's definitely memeable. It's definitely really fun. I wouldn't say it's their best. Their best game is Transformers Devastation. But what Revengeance is the original idea of like Raiden, who is one of the protagonists in Metal Gear, is the protagonist of Metal Gear Solid 2. He was supposed to get his own kind of like filler story, and it became kind of its own spin-off that was unrelated to. It was far off in the future after 4. It's fun for what it is, but it's separate enough that you can enjoy it without knowing anything about Metal Gear Solid.
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah.
All right then. Oh, so something I wanted to ask you about. Actually, you sent me this message a while ago. Um, the Mafia, the definitive edition, is coming to Game Pass.
Yes, yes, it
You
is.
you said that you think that I should check it out. Why did why?
Just there's something about so Mafia. You've played two. I think we all played two, right?
I don't think I've played any Mafia game.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
So Mafia. When you hear about that series and the series is in your head, what do you picture?
A GTA clone.
Okay, that's fair. So I would say that's pretty accurate. As for why I said you'd appreciate it, is I think it's surprisingly different when you get into it
Okay.
compared to like the idea of just a flat out GTA clone.
Hmm.
Even less so than Saints Row, I would say. Obviously, it's got that structure. It's like you know how LA Noire was like it's technical, like people called it a GTA clone and that wasn't really accurate, but it had
Hmm.
like that same world navigation and
Yeah.
gameplay. It's kind of like that. Like the reason I said you'd probably appreciate it is I think you would like the story, and I think you would like
Interesting.
the gameplay flow. It's not something that's gonna like blow your balls off with action like a Mad Max, but I think for somebody who can appreciate, like we just got done talking about cinematics and like games that juggle it, I think you would appreciate it. I guess is
Yeah.
the best way to put it. I don't think you're gonna be head over heels like, wow, I just played one of the best games ever made. I think it's something you would appreciate, and it would also. I mean, I'm not a diehard Mafia fan, but I think one and two are pretty good games. The first one is pretty antiquated. The remaster that hit Game Pass, it smooths out a lot of the edges that make it more palatable to someone like you.
Hmm. So, what does that mean?
You're Jewish. No, I'm just saying, like, somebody who has little patience for certain tropes.
you good on you. You had that one in the chamber. That was slick.
It wasn't bait, but the second it left my mouth, I'm just like, he's gonna say something about what I just said. I'm like, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say?
Oh, that was fucking funny. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
that's what I meant by it.
so I'm trying to think of like the last game I was really invested in the story.
Mm.
That honestly was probably Cyberpunk.
Mm.
Uh, before that though, as far as a story in a game, oh man, I don't that I was like seriously invested in. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. It's been a while since I played a game for like its story.
Yeah, that's fine. I guess
Everything
let
on my
me.
Steam's recently played list is like either looter shooter or action game or like Dark Tide. Um, yeah, I don't fucking know.
Yeah. I mean,
Before
well,
Cyberpunk, yeah,
we did say a while ago, this is the first time you're really going to be free from the Destiny mines. So it's,
Jesus.
you know,
We'll see what they come out with their episodes or whatever they're gonna the content drops. But I think I'm gonna take a pretty big break from Destiny. Like, if someone from my clan wants to raid or something, yeah, I'll like hop in. But I'm not gonna be like hardcore grinding it out on my own time anymore.
yeah. Yeah, the nice thing about Destiny in your case is there's no monthly subscription, so it's not like the
I
biggest
mean,
pain in the ass.
there's not a monthly subscription, but I still pay for it yearly, technically.
But that's like the cost of content because Destiny had
Yeah.
a lot of like weird gates that you needed to pay
Mhm.
for. Like I remember when the anniversary shit was going on,
Oh
and it's like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was a whole debacle where it's like the complete package really wasn't the complete package. Then
You have to buy
the
the
bundles
dungeon
were all.
key and then
Yeah,
buy yeah.
that
That,
was,
that's
that
a
was
it's always been a fucking mess.
yeah.
I'm with you on that one. I am, and most of the Destiny community would be too. Um, but I don't really think I have anything else to. Nothing else really happened this week, as far as like huge news stories go.
Mm.
Destiny
Uh,
is dying. GameInformer is dead, and uh, what was the third one again?
What'd you say?
Uh, The Destiny is dying, Game
Oh yeah.
Informer is dead, and then there was a third thing.
We talked about AA and shit like that.
Oh yeah, well that's more of a little bit more of a hopeful story.
Yeah. The last thing I will say, just because I found it funny. You know the game Braid.
Yes, I know of it.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna. It's not a major thing, but the anniversary edition kind of came and went, where they did they updated the graphics, put it on current systems outside of backwards compatibility, and I think it was somebody interviewed the guy behind it, Jonathan Blow, and he they're asking him about it, and he said something along the lines of it sold like dog shit. Like it sold really, really bad. And actually I posted this on the BOON Syndication Twitter, where I basically said it was novel at the time, but it wasn't really the masterpiece everybody made it out to be. So I was tickled that like a kind of it was an all right kind of platformer. It was like a tight platformer with a rewind gimmick where you rewound time and shit like that. And it was one of the early examples of like a game you could buy on a console digitally that also had like a story that subverted your expectations, and it was also like vague and stuff that you needed to pick up in the background and shit like that. Nothing super special, but it had all like the right novelty gimmicks, right? So I was tickled when something that was heralded as a masterpiece very pretentiously sold absolutely terribly. So I'm just like, I can kind of close the chapter on like this one pretentious thing. It's just like, yeah, it's whatever. I'm not shitting on Braid. I think it's overrated. It's definitely not the masterpiece, because it's one of those games that gets held in high regard, like very much. Like if you go to the Wikipedia page, I'm sure like masterpiece is on there like 10 times. Not that Wikipedia is worth a damn, but like so that's the only small story I had. So the good guys won, I guess.
Hey. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's probably as good a place as any to end it. Hopefully, it'll be better news next week.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few dour things, but it's nothing. I see one is like liberation for you. One is kind of uncertain, and I mean, there's no spinning the GameInformer thing unless you find some nasty skeletons in their closet. And I'm like, yeah, fuck those guys, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, that one sucked. I was not fond of that at all.
Yeah. But until next time, then I'm sure there'll be something bright.
Yes, sir. Yeah, always looking on the bright side.
You know it.
All right. Well, I guess that does it for episode 17. We'll talk to everyone next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.